So this is Muggs back with another random video. We've got this video involving this gentleman who was on Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. If you watched that at all on History Channel, and this is his viewpoints on the world or whatever, and I've watched a few different videos of him in the past, and they've always been kind of interesting. So let's see what he has to say.
The world is an evil, villainous place, right? It's full of people who do things that hurt other people. That's what it is.
You've said this before. You're like, human beings are not good.
No.
But and my comeback to that is, you said this moment where you kind of flipped over was when it was before CIA, right?
Correct.
This is right when you're leaving the academy. Yeah, I think about that line a lot that you had in episode 107 with me. I mention it all the time, where you're just like, we were going back and forth on whether things are all good or all bad, and talked about this for like 10, 15 minutes. And I was trying to paint some examples, obviously, as someone who's not been out in the field like you, and you're like, I've lived that. You have not lived that. And like, I could almost see you like hallucinating above your body, because then like you went into this zone. I don't think the camera does it justice, but like you had this look in your eye where you were re-seeing all these things, talking about the worst examples of the worst things that human beings do to other human beings. And it really affected me, because it's like, it does put things in perspective. That's one of the nice things about this show. I sit in a podcast studio, but I have people from around the world come in here and sometimes tell me some things that, are harsh realities, if you will. But what I'm curious about is, if at any point throughout your CIA career, when you were seeing some of said things, if you wavered in your faith or thought that, maybe this is all bullshit, because why the fuck would I live in a world where X happens?
So, no, it's actually the other way around. My time at CIA made me that much more confident in my faith, because I saw the principles of the Bible lived all over the world.
Can you explain that?
So one of the things that you learn in the Bible is that, we live in a fallen world. We live in a world that's controlled by Satan. We live in a world where the enemy is the most powerful being on the planet, right? God is waiting for us somewhere else. The Holy Spirit is here with us to help guide us and lead us. But God doesn't claim to control the earth. He has sent his son so that his son can have cleaned our sin forever. God is not really interested in the earth. God is interested in the universe and the individual souls that choose to join him, right? There's it may have been Ian or somebody else that helped me on my faithful journey, and there were 3 or 5 of them that were really.
I think it's not that simple. Like, I think a lot of people, they put this viewpoint that God is either careless, God is doing everything, or that it's all on us just because he doesn't want to have to bother or something like that. And I think that if you look at the Bible and you break it down into whether or not God's doing the same action throughout, and you'll notice that is changing over time, and God kind of realizes throughout the Bible more and more it's better if you have consequence of action rather than you force consequence of action. And that's kind of where people learn more. You know, you touch the element, you get a little burn on your finger, you realize you shouldn't touch the element. But if you were just instantly healed every time you touch the element, what would stop you from touching the element again? Anyways, so I think it's more of a realization within God of the necessity of not taking over all of whatever and stopping whatever everything that bad could possibly happen, because by doing that there is no consequence of action. If there's no consequence of action, then there's no learning, there's no good, there's no evil. It's just never-ending chaos, essentially.
Anyway, my faithful journey at the academy once explained to me this idea of, you know, the earth is a ball and Satan is a Rottweiler, and Satan controls that ball. We are his plaything, right? The enemy, if you will. But the Rottweiler is on a leash, and the leash is held by God. So he gets to play with the earth as much as God lets him play with the earth. But otherwise, we're just stuck on this thing, right?
God lets him do it.
Because God is the one that's in ultimate control.
And what do you think of that?
For me, it's very liberating, because for me, it shows me how small I am. Yeah. It shows me how big the enemy is, which is what...
Again, it's not a matter of letting or not letting, I think, with the devil. It's us. It's us that are empowering the devil. It's us that are choosing to worship the devil. It's us that are choosing to follow the devil. It is not the devil guiding us. It is us guiding ourselves to the devil. To our baser urges, to our lack of reasonable understandings, until it's too late to do anything about it.
I need to know, because guess what 95% of my day is filled with? Temptation to do the wrong thing. And everybody listening is in the same fucking boat.
Yeah.
That's what fills our day.
Yes.
Temptation to do the wrong thing, not motivation to do the right thing, right? So it makes sense. I like that visual understanding of, oh, big scary dog, I'm on a fucking ball. I can't beat that.
It's not true in any way. It can be possible. You can end up in that state, but you don't have to be in that state. You can be in a state where the one thing you are seeking is for the betterment of everybody. It is entirely possible. It is entirely possible. And that can motivate you more than any selfish context, because whatever selfish thing it is that you want or think you need, you will always be limited to your own existence, and that will have no end, right? There will be no follow through. It'll just end with you, right? That's it. So, you know, it's a very limited amount of motivation that you'll ever be able to have when you know in some way in your own head that it's never going to mean nothing. It's just going to disappear and like out in the wind. It's blowing in the wind.
Dog's going to do whatever the hell it wants to with me. But life doesn't end here. There's something bigger than the dog, right? So when I get chewed, swallowed, and shat out the back end of that Rottweiler, like that's the end. That's when I have the chance to actually join the Father. For me, it's a very comforting idea. Traveling, operating, meeting people around the world, you learn very fucking fast the world is a fallen place. You learn very fast Satan is in control. You learn very fast people accept, adhere, follow, obsess with
Satan's in control.
with their temptations, right? You find that everywhere. You see it, it's crystal clear. You can't fight it. You have to accept it. And then you learn a lot about yourself by seeing all the villainy of the world. The world is an evil, villainous place, right? It's full of people who do things that hurt other people. That's what it is.
You've said this before. You're like, human beings are not good.
No.
It's just easier. It's just easier. That's all. It's always easier to follow temptation. It's just always easier to do so. But it's not necessarily the only thing available or the only focus that you can have, and it's all a matter of focus, right? Like, temptation can take you over, but not if you have focus. If you have focus, then those things that tempt you, they don't seem to matter very much in comparison with what you're actually going for.
But like, and my comeback to that is, yes, there are evil people in the world, and there are more than we would like to think. There's no doubt about that. Whatever got them there, it's a separate story, but like, that's a real thing. But then there are also good people too, and you seem to operate from the assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that
This is an illusion. There is no such thing as good or evil people. Not really. Not for the most part. There are to a certain extent, but for the most part, every individual, every single person out there that's listening to this and that will ever watch this or ever listen to this has a little bit of evil in them and a little bit of good in them. And those ratios will change throughout their life, and they'll change mostly based on circumstances out of that person's control. And it will seem like most of it's in their control, but it's actually not a lot of the time. And anyways, let's continue on.
like, no, that's not really the case. Most of them are just bad, and they're gonna be more likely to do bad things.
It's just a matter of what inputs will push them to a bad place. That's all it is, right? What inputs would get you to a place where you'd kill another person? What inputs would get you to a place where you'd steal from somebody else? What inputs would get you to a place where you would lie?
All right, let's run that example real fast. Our mutual friend Matt Cox talks about this.
Okay.
The threshold.
And he realizes this because it was his job to make people do things that they didn't necessarily want to do. So you have to understand these things to get people to do things that you don't want them to do. This is why he understands this breakdown. That it's not a matter of good or evil in an individual or whatever. It is simply a matter of changing around the circumstances enough in such a way that will manipulate that person into doing that thing. And it's not that hard to do. Not if you have the understanding and the resources to do so.
Of committing crime, and he learned, because he never committed a crime until he was 30 years old, he learned that he has a low threshold.
Correct.
Right? But he's like, everyone has a threshold, and what I mean by that is, if you're the mother of an infant and the infant's starving, you'll steal some fucking bread. But that, to me, is that good? Is it good to steal? No. Is it technically, like, if you're looking at it purely objectively, like,
Is there is there a good or or evil in an action in itself without any reference to the circumstances? I don't think so. I think whether or not something is good or bad or anything else like that is entirely in relation to the circumstances involved. Right? Like, you could kill somebody, but if you did that because that person was killing hundreds of people on the top of a fucking, tower, and he's shooting them all down, and you shoot him in the back of the head or whatever, you know what? You did good. You did good. And there's no way you can say that killing somebody is really objectively by itself a good thing. So but that's the thing. It's nothing is good or bad in itself. It's in relation to what the circumstances involved in that situation is.
good versus evil, the evil option to do, sure. But like if you're a mother trying to give sustenance to your starving child and you take him one loaf of bread, you understand what I mean? Like, that's not an evil thing to me. It's not ideal, but
That's
like
subjective.
that shit happens.
The fact that you said it's not evil to me
Subjective, yeah.
shows that it's subjective. You know who it is evil to? The fucking court system. And the court system will say it's black and white, right? And the court system is built by men who built policy.
Again, this isn't actually true. There's a law, necessity, actually. Necessity. If you actually need an item for survival and actually require it, can't buy it, don't have the money for it, and truly require it to survive. I'm going to make this clear. Require it to survive. Most countries in the world have a law specifically stating that if it's a necessity, you can take it. And everybody wants to proclaim like there is no providing, there is no taking in legitimate court or anything like that, when in many, many countries there are laws in regards to necessity. People are ignorant of the law. They don't know the law. And as a result, they do not claim their right of necessity. But in fact, it does exist. So this is just false. And many, many places have some sort of law in regards to necessity. Anyways.
Right? People, humans, men and females, whatever. Right? But it was built by human beings who built a policy to create and enforce a law. All the evil.
Objectively.
Yeah. Well, because they needed something objective.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it would all fall to some magistrate who decides. Right? So the point I'm trying to make is we live in a fallen world. It is an evil.
Which is actually how it was written. It was actually written to be decided by the actual courts. It was not objective. It was supposed to be 100% subjective, based on viewpoint, based on necessity, which requires the human input of understanding what an actual necessity would be in that time period.
World, if you're going to use the terms good and evil, right? There are pockets, moments of good as people aspire to benefit and help other human beings. Moments. but we are predominantly fallen. We are predominantly evil, predominantly selfish, predominantly self-interested, predominantly abusive, predominantly manipulative. That is what we do. We manipulate our kids to get them to brush their teeth and turn off the TV. We say that we're doing it for a good reason, and we forget the fact that one day those kids that are manipulated into watching TV today grow up into adults who are manipulated into whatever the fuck else, right? And they end up on trial like Diddy. We have...
Yeah, but you look back at that, okay, that's the media, right? Yes, you're brainwashed. You're brainwashed every day or whatever. Every time you're watching a show, every time you're listening to music at this point, it's all owned by the same people. And those same people do not want you doing good things overall. They want as many of you doing bad things for you, for your family, for your country, everything. Because there is more profit in that, right? Everything goes well, you're doing well, everybody's healthy, less money to make, everybody's being productive. There's less that they can manipulate into converging all assets that are rewardable in any given time period to a limited number of individuals. And so, yeah, this is... It's not that you as an individual it is impossible or anything else like that. It's you don't really have a choice in how your brain's being manipulated.
The world can't be broken into this definition of good and evil because it is in a predominantly evil world. If you're going to use those terms,
As a man of faith, you say that, though.
as a man of faith, I say that too. I also say that as an experienced, objective CIA officer. Right? That is what the world is. So you have to look at it through through consequences, inputs and consequences, inputs and outputs. Right?
One other thing, though, the reason you come to this viewpoint, and most people will come to this viewpoint, is always, I believe, comes back to the necessity of greed. Necessity of greed and self-interest. If you have no self-interest, it is self-destructive, right? Like you need things to survive. You need stuff to maintain yourself. You need some means of your own to have any place within society and to have any value, especially if you're male. You need food to feed your family. You need a house to live in. You need. So there's a certain requirement of greed or whatever, but stemming it so that we don't become overwhelmed by that material need, that material want, that we can see beyond that to at least some extent, but don't go overboard on it and become like a monk, basically. You know, we have to be able to find that middle ground a bit better, but we just need to be able to look for it or whatever. But it's possible. It's out there. It's just we're just not there yet.
Through that lens, because whether somebody has good intentions or evil intentions, you know, positive or destructive intentions, whatever the fuck you want to call it, you can always create predictable outcomes based off of predictable inputs. That's the world we have to live in.
All right, let's go back to what you just said, though. You said objectively as a CIA officer, something like that, right? I would actually argue that that's subjective, and here's why I say that. Your job is to go to not always dangerous places. Sometimes you go to a friendly country
Correct.
with a job, right? But it's not to go meet, the friendly fucking village baker when you're there, unless you're trying to get information from them and they don't do anything good or evil. They just, say,
They
like,
bake.
oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
fucking 55 degrees today, and you're like, oh, thank you.
Yeah, middle
Right?
class.
Sure. God damn you. God damn you. But I see why you get the comments you get. Anyway, but if you are going into these places, you are trying to find the people that can be manipulated and can be pulled to the other side, or you're trying to observe the people who are doing bad shit or are involved with the people.
Everybody can. Everybody can. It's all based on circumstances. Everybody can or whatever. And you just need to know what you're
doing
doing.
bad shit. So subjectively, you are always looking at a sample size of like, hey, what, maybe not evil, but like not good, whatever's going on here, versus like, the fucking lady teaching elementary school for 30 years and helping the kids.
There's no
She
difference.
means nothing to you. You're not doing jobs with her. You see what I'm saying?
I do, and you're not 100% wrong, right? There's a flaw in your logic, right?
Okay.
You are correct. The majority of our effort goes into a small subset of villainous people, right? You have to be a terrorist. You have to be an army general. You have to be a nuclear lab technician. You have to be somebody that we call a person of access. That person of access who has access to state secrets, that is where we predominantly put our time. But that doesn't mean that we only manipulate the people of access, because to get to that person of access,
It's a lot easier to go after the people that don't have access because they haven't been trained to stop all the methods that you were trained to be able to deal with. I never did this or anything else like that, but I understand the concept. I understand the functionality of the whole situation.
everything from the flights to the taxi
Yes.
cabs, the hotels, where you stay. When you live undercover, you are living undercover.
100%. Yeah.
That means everybody around you who is not a person of access still gets shaped, manipulated, puppeteered.
But you're doing that.
Correct.
Right? So the flight attendant who, gives you something she shouldn't give you because you're being nice to her, that's not bad.
No, but that shows that inputs and outputs can be controlled.
Okay.
Which is the original point that we were making.
Right. Why we're recording at 11:30 today instead of 12:30 because you switched it last minute.
Inputs and outputs.
Like you do every time.
Inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
But I also asked you first what you needed to make sure that you got what you needed.
Yeah, I told you afterwards. you didn't ask me.
Inputs and outputs drive everything. It's not about good or evil. The flight attendant has predominantly evil thoughts. She has predominantly self-interested, self-motivated, manipulative thoughts, right? She doesn't like having to work shift that she doesn't want. She wants to get paid more for the job that she does half-assed. Like that's all of us. That's human beings, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that she's worth a CIA officer's time to further manipulate like a person of access.
Right. Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.
Anyways, that was a pretty good little clip. I'd say it was fairly accurate or whatever. For a little quick synopsis, I've seen more broken down explanations of some of the things he's talked about or whatever, but that was a pretty good one. Anyways, maybe we'll check out some more of his, and I'll see you on the next one.